All right. So for the last couple of days, I've been getting a lot of requests here for particular meshes and processes that um, people are looking to get done. Things that they may not know how to do on their own, or have not been able to figure out a very optimized way or clean way of working. And so I thought I would take some time today to do a request day and do a few of these meshes in the way that I would approach them if I were working on them for production, and get something done here in a fairly quick way, and trying to keep the quality bar as high as possible. There are a few things that I would do beyond this that I don't want to really worry about too much. Things like doing really high end textures. I'm gonna skimp on some of the texturing here in favor of the modeling stuff being the focus. And I'll point these things out as I go, so that you can be aware of where it is that I'm skimping, and what stuff I am concentrating on in terms of trying to hit that quality bar. So the very first thing that I'm going to attack is a request I've had for a an American flagpole. The kind of flagpole you get inside of a building, whether it be inside of a school or a police station, or one of those things that you would get. Now, as it happens, I actually have modeled one of these things before. Um, a previous project that I worked on just for fun was creating the inside, or reproducing the inside of the Gotham precinct, and so I figured what I would do is I would go and try and run my approach on this, and see what I could do with that. So um, I'll jump into this now. On my mesh, um, I did go through and I modeled the eagle, and I modeled the flagpole, and I modeled the base, and I did the gold rope and such. These are some of the things I'm not really going to bother with too much. It's more the flag and the getting it to kind of fall and crumple the right way is what I want to get done. And so I will model these things. I'm going to do very much just proxy mesh versions of them, though. I don't see a need to go um, full blown on these things, to the point that they are as accurate as I'd like them to be. So the first thing that I need to do is to work out the dimensions of the flag and the flag pole. Now, I found, with a little bit of Googling, this website, usflag.org, which has got the very precise measurements of a U.S. flag. Um, a lot of flags are different. Even the flags from different nations have different dimensions to them. And really, because I'm not going to be worrying about doing the texture of the American flag for this, I'm just going to be worried about two numbers here, which is the height of the flag, A, and the width of the flag, B, also known as the hoist and the fly. So this is a ratio of 1 to 1.9. Now, working with ratios here makes it really easy to get these things correct, because all I really have to do is just make an object that's 1 by 1.9, and I can scale it up or down, and those ratios will remain the same. The next thing that I need to do is determine how large I want the flagpole to be, and I'm going to do something at about 6 feet tall, and then drape the flag from it. So to do that, I'll first just go make a box here in Max, and I'll set the height of the box to be 182, so that I have my 6 feet, and I'm not using the box here for any part of the flag of the flagpole. I just want to see where 6 feet is, so that I can kind of estimate some of the other things that I'm going to do. So I'm going to move this guy to the side, because I do want the flagpole to be centered. And so I'll start with the base of the flagpole by just making a cylinder, removing the height segments, and giving it a little bit of some cleaner numbers here. So I'm going to do 20 centimeters, and I'll convert this to an edible poly. I'm going to make sure that it is at the origin. Again, centered in the world always helps. And then what I'll do is start giving it a few extra details here. So while doing this, I am kind of looking at the reference image here. And what I'll do is I'll go and place this in the world and get it to match the dimensions here that I'm looking for. So just using Swift Loop and scaling, and just getting this thing to be about the dimensions that I want, something like that. I'll also build the main body of the pole here out of this as well. Inset, and okay, and then extrude this. And this is where my little box is going to come in hand, because I'll bring this all the way up. And then I can see that I've made this a little too thick for a flagpole. And so I'm just going to scale it down. And I don't actually, require much else beyond this. I am, however, going to add a little bit of a topper for this. I'm not going to bother with the eagle or anything like that. So I'll do a simplified version of the topper, which is just going to be a sphere. So I'll just rotate this with my angle snaps. I'll make sure that it is centered in X and Y so that it lines up with the pole. And I'll go to drop it down just a little bit here. And I will go in and give it a little bit of some detail on the bottom. This doesn't have to be anything too extravagant here, but I do want it to kind of look a little bit more like a topper for this thing, and not just a sphere sitting on top. So I'll just run a bevel on this guy. Or something like that. And then I can even probably just delete these. And I'll grab this other little bevel here that didn't quite go the size that I wanted it to. And I'll do that. And voila, one flagpole. So what I'm going to do with the flagpole is bring it into my fabric simulation software in order to create the entirety of the flag. And so there's my flagpole. I hang the flag from this. I need now only export this out of my software so that I can bring it into the other software. So I'm going to export selected, and I'm just going to throw this on my desktop for now. I'll do it as an FBX, and this is going to be called flagpole mesh, and I'll export it as such. Now, the fabric simulation software I'm going to be using is Marvelous Designer. And so I'll boot this up. And while this is normally used for doing articles of clothing and what have you, I'm going to use it to simulate the flag. Now, there are a couple of things that I'm not going to bother with the new version just yet. A couple of things here that I want to kind of address. First, you can just simulate all kinds of clothing and fabric and such inside of Max, and it will work. It'll be just fine. But there's a little bit of a gap between the simulation and being able to interact with it. So essentially in Max, it's not real time. You simulate it, it'll drape and fall. And then you're kind of stuck with whatever you get. And while you can put things in the scene that'll interact with the fabric, it's not as real time as it is in Marvelous Designer. And so I'm going to do it in here only because it'll speed up the entirety of the process and get me to a point where I can get there a lot faster. So here in Marvelous Designer, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Import, FBX, and I'll grab my flagpole mesh. I'm going to ensure that I'm working in centimeters, since that's what I was working with in Max. And I'll just import this in, and now my flagpole exists here in Marvelous. I can see here in the 2D viewport the silhouette of the flagpole, and now I need only create the flag. Again, going from the measurements that we had before, I know that it's 1 to 1.9. So I'm going to go and grab the polygon rectangle, and I'll click. And then I can go and give this a value of, I'll do 10 by 19. And you can see those numbers are going to be backward here. The flag is running sideways. So I'll swap them to 19 by 10. And I've now got something in the right dimensions. Usually there's going to be a really, really tiny flag. So let's go and add another 0 to the end of this so that I've got 190 by 100. And I'll say OK. And this one's going to be a little bit larger than I need it to be. Or maybe not even. Let's go take a look. Yeah, I think it's a little bit bigger than I'd like it to be. So one of the big things you want to do with the American flag is never have it touch the ground. And having something of this magnitude, it will definitely touch the ground, but not the end of the world. I'll scale it down to match the flagpole. Now, one of the things that I'm kind of looking at here while doing this is the reference image that I've got, and I'm looking at the gap from the ground to this corner, and I'm trying to keep that consistent with mine. So I'm going to look at placing this in the right place. And again, as it droops down and hangs, I want to make sure that the angle I'm getting from the longest point, that's still a little on the large side. I'll try it about here. Now, it's going to be pretty hard to get this just right with the flag extended like this. So what I'm going to do is put it in the right position, and then I'll go and start simulating it, and we'll get to a point where it is going to work. Hey, Mike. Welcome aboard. So I'm just going to move this guy out a little bit, and the way the flag is attached is by 2 little holes in the flag in which a metal ring has been rung, and that metal ring goes to the pole. And so I don't have a metal ring here. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to put a pin in where I want the flag to be stuck, and that should be it. If I simulate this now, it'll droop and fall down, much like you would get a flag to. Now I can see here by looking at it once simulated that it's hanging a little higher than I'd like it to be. So I'll just go and scale it up a little bit. And I'll redo the simulation. And I'm now getting to a point where it is starting to look like the right distance or the right ratio here on the pole. Now, as I mentioned, with this software, I can actually go and twirl things around and move them as they simulate. And so with the simulation in progress, I'm just going to try and get this to sit a little bit more naturally. Now, there's 2 colors of polygons that we're seeing here. There's the brighter side and the darker side. Now, the brighter side is the front-facing side of the polygons. These are the normal direction. And the other side that we're seeing is the inverted normal. Now, the reason that this is kind of important is that even though it really doesn't always happen this way in the real world, I would like to see the American flag the right way, which would mean to have it curl around so that I see more of the normal side than the back of the normals. And this is where being able to manipulate this thing real time kind of comes in handy, is that I can actually manually move it around till I get something like this, so that it is actually being presented to me the right way. So there'll be stars and stripes, or white stars on a blue background here in the top left, and then all the stripes around on the other way. The next thing I'm going to look at is my topology, and exactly how many polygons I'm getting out of this thing. And I can do a couple of things. I can see that I'm getting some pretty ugly wrinkles and pops in here, which is not the end of the world. And so I'm going to go through and kind of adjust this a little bit. And we'll get it to the point where I'm happy with the topology, or at least the number of polygons. Now, there's not a counter in here that I can see, but what I want to do is just kind of look at the size of the polygons and make sure that I'm not getting too many. About 1,000 or so, maybe 2,000 is probably going to be okay. And currently what I'm getting looks to be about in that vein. I'm going to go and adjust the material here of the flag. I'll do this by selecting the material in the top right, going down into its physical properties, and choosing a preset that's a little closer to silk. And when I do that, the flag will kind of readjust and droop some more. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to take a look at where the stars and stripes are here as it's drooped down. So I'm going to throw a texture on this. Now, it doesn't have to be a finished texture here or anything really completed. I'm just going to go and grab an American flag. And I'm just Googling this here over my other monitor. And I'm just going to bring that in just to see. I want to see where the stars and stripes are. I do want to be able to see both stars and stripes. I want to be able to see all three colors. The main reason for this is that it'll just look like a red and white striped flag if I don't get this to kind of lay out the right way. Now, being that this corner, the top left corner, is pinned to the pole, I'm pretty much guaranteed to see some of that there. And so I'm going to just grab an image. I just realized that my Google search was inaccurate, and it was looking for flagpoles again. So I'm just going to adjust this. And the first one I find is going to be enough. I'm just going to save this to my desktop and bring it in here. So to bring a texture in, I'm going to click again on my default fabric. I'll go and find the texture slot, and I'll hit the load button, go to my desktop, and I'll grab the American flag I just grabbed. And then I'll use the adjust UV buttons here, and I'll get this to the point where it is rendering the right way. And I know it's not exactly accurate just yet. I've got to get it to the point where I've got the right number of stars and stripes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's going to be close enough. And there, yeah, I can see that that does indeed very clearly show off the stars and the stripes on the flag. It's resting quite naturally. It's just drooping all the way down. Cool. I'm quite pleased with that. I don't really need to do much else beyond this. I don't need to increase the power of the simulation. I don't really need to increase or decrease the resolution of my mesh. This is going to work just like this. To get this out of here and back into 3ds Max or wherever we're going to be adjusting this, I'm just going to select the pattern, file, export selected, and I can throw this up on the desktop, and I'll just save it as flag simulated. Here I'm going to make sure I'm using a single object. I'm not welding any seams. This is just a single piece of fabric, so this is no bearing on anything here. Thin, I don't need to give any thickness to this, and then unified UV coordinates. And then that's it. We should be done in here. Now you notice I minimized that. I did not close it. I want to make sure that the mesh works the right way before I start closing things. So there it is now in Max. You can see that it did bring its texture along with it. You can also see that texture is not correct. The UV coordinates are not accurate here. So this is just using my my flag that I grabbed here. So we're going to go and adjust the UVs. Now the UVs are based off of the pattern that was created, which is this. And you can see why we're not getting the entirety of the flag, This is not what the UVs are meant to look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and stretch them out until they run the entire proper distance of the 0 to 1 box. And I'll do this just by scaling out from opposing corners, zooming in as best I can. I could snap this to the 0 to 1 box, but I don't think I need to go to that trouble with this. It's be pretty close here without needing to do that. There we go. So something like that. I can now convert this to an editable poly. And the UVs are perfect now. Okay. That is essentially it for the mesh. There were a few places here where we were getting some ugly topology. This has to do with turned edges, and there are going to be some we'll need to adjust on this thing. In order to adjust them, I'll just go to my vertices here and go and find a place like right here where I can see that turned triangle. I can use edges, go to my turn button, and I can go and turn all those triangles that are meant to curve this thing the right way. So essentially they should all go with the vertical in order to have the fabric look like it's being pulled down. And there really is no need for any of these things to go horizontally. Now, if you were working on a mesh like this that needed to be animated, something you needed to bring, either get rigged, or even if you just wanted it to billow softly, then this one, again, we're going to go with the assumption that this is meant to be inside a schoolhouse or something like that, where there wouldn't even be a breeze moving this thing around. There's no need to animate it. Just having it static is going to look the part. But if you had this outside, if you had this in a place where you would want it animated, then there's a little bit more that goes into it. You know, I would probably want to vertex paint it so that I can determine where the vertices will move on this. If it was a mesh that was going to be rigged, turning these edges like this would not be enough. I would actually have to go and create the edges here, because once you bring this into software like Maya, Maya will not adhere to the turned edges that I've created here. Maya's got an algorithm that detects where these turned edges go, and the direction that they follow, which has to do with the shortest distance between two vertices. So because of that, Max's altering of these turned edges just becomes kind of a moot point. So you would actually have to go and connect them the right way. So I'm just kind of having a once over here. I'm following like the main curve of these things. Again, the place where it's going to be the worst is where the curves are tight. And just going in here and adjusting these to follow. And what that'll do is it'll just give you a much better flow of geometry so that you get a much cleaner, rounder shape out of this without it being too high poly. And so you can see there's a couple more here. And yeah, I'm just kind of trying to make them follow vertically so that they follow the flow of the wrinkle here. All these wrinkles are perfectly vertical. And so the edges too should be vertical. That's not too bad. I'm looking at the little wrinkle inside here. They seem to be okay there. This one can turn. I'm also kind of looking at the highlight here that runs along from the specularity in Max, and making sure that that highlight is as straight as I can get it, because that too has to do with these turned edges. But anyway, that's about it for that. Again, there's a little bit more that I would do with this. Mostly, the process would involve using proper materials. So the image that I grabbed of the flag. That is not how I would texture something like this. You know, an actual flag is going to be cotton. It's going to have a fabric weave on it, a really, really tight one. The stars are embroidered, meaning there's some thickness to them that isn't there on just an image. And so I would probably go into Substance Designer, and I would go and actually make a proper material for this so that it does read as being the fabric of a flag. It'll go a long way to making this look far more. Sorry about that. We lost the stream for a second. I'm not entirely sure why, but it appears to be back now. But yeah, that's my take on this, on a flag. And so, yeah. Okay, on to the next request I had. This one is a little different. What we're looking at here is a tree. I've had some requests on doing a tree and having hey Mike, the walls. Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. Let me do the walls first. I'll do the walls and then I'll go to the tree. I'm just gonna close down my Googles and go take a look at what they look like. So I had a request here for curved office walls here. Braybrook 89 is making the Oval Office in the White House and has asked about making the walls for the Oval Office. And so I'm just doing a Google search, trying to find what they look like. And we'll see what I find. Okay. So I've just gone and Googled the Oval Office here to take a look at the actual design of what these things look like. So it looks pretty straightforward to me. The Oval Office is, as the name would suggest, a giant oval. Every president who's been in the Oval Office has had the ability to design it. Has had the ability to go in and pick and choose what the different looks will be for it. Though the actual room itself never changes. The wallpaper does, the carpeting does, the size of the seal on the carpet does, and all those varying things all change from president to president. Now, the actual walls themselves are a large continuous surface. There doesn't appear to be, at any point, any breaks in the wall. Looks like it's all one big long surface. There is a kind of floorboard here that goes up to chair height that runs along. That has this repetitious wooden pattern here. But everything else appears to be a really straightforward curved surface. And so that makes it fairly easy to reproduce. I'm going to do one thing here and see if I can't find a floor plan for the Oval Office. I'll try and get this as accurate as I can. And I'll see if I can make this in Max here. So there appears to be a lot of blueprints of it, which is good. I don't know how accurate these things are. I would probably spend a lot more time researching this, or I building it myself. But I'll just kind of grab one of these ones that looks to be about the right size and dimensions, and I'll use that. I don't even know where the Oval Office is in the White House. Hey, look at that. So I'll use this. It's a fairly large image here. And so I'll go take a look at it. And I'll bring this into Max, and I'll use this to kind of define the walls. If I can. Let us see if it loads. There are a lot of images here. There it is. Let's see if I can get the full resolution image in another tab here. That appears to be the full resolution image. Okay. So I just got a link from Michael about the dimensions of the Oval Office. Cool. The only one I'm really interested here is the height, 5.6 meters. And so that and the 10.9 meters. I'll leave it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this image into Max, and we'll start this. So the first thing I need to do is go and find the reference image and its dimensions. So I'm going to open its properties up, and in its properties, I'm going to go to the details and find the dimensions, which are right here, 4, 8, 9, 6, 30, 72. And I'm going to use those dimensions to create a plane in Max so that I don't distort the image. And I'll just go type these values in. So 3072 and 4896. And then I'll just place this thing at the origin for now. And then what I need to do is make sure that my image is here. So I'll just drag the image from my browser onto the plane. I'm in wireframe, which I don't want to be. So I'll just drag that in, and I now have the image here correct. The next thing I need to do is ensure that the dimensions are correct. So this is where the image that Mike sent me here as part of his request will come in handy. And so I'm just going to go and open that tab here again. And I'm going to create a some dimensions here to try and get this accurate. So the long axis from point to point here along the long dimensions, I'm going to make a box that size. And I'll find the long axis. Here it is here. And I need this to be 10.9 meters. And I'm working in centimeters. So every 100 centimeters is a meter. So that's going to be, there's 1 meter, there's 10 meters, and 0.9. So that's actually going to be 109. Like so. Okay, so that's the long dimension of this room. I'm going to do a couple more things here. First, I'm going to set the image plane to match up with the origin. And luckily, this carpet pattern has these lines in here that dictate the center of these things. It's going to make life a little bit easier for me. And I'll just manually go move this guy to the origin. Like so. I'm going to hold Shift and rotate snaps. And I'll make a copy of this guy 90 degrees. And I can go and put the other dimensions here. 88. So instead of 109, this is 88. Or 880. And there's the short axis of this thing. So we're going to now scale down this plane, and I'm going to do this with a pivot point at the center first so that it doesn't move the image of the Oval Office. I can now scale it down, and I should hit a point where this is exactly correct if, again, my images are accurate here. That's pretty darn good. If I'm off here, it's by a tiny, tiny margin. So we now have the floor plan accurate. The other thing that I want to do here is take my boxes and set their heights. So the height of the walls in the Oval Office are 5.6 meters. So I'll go into the height, and that'll be 560 in centimeters. And that is how tall I need to make the walls. That doesn't look right. Yeah, I guess that does look right. I've never actually looked at how tall the Oval Office is. I'm just looking at some images here in my browser. And yeah, I guess that's going to be right. Now, I don't believe this is the top of the wall that's here. It's got a domed ceiling. And so I believe the walls actually fall shy of the domed ceiling. And, yeah, that's right, 5 meters. So I'm going to bring this down. And I've got another 60 units. Whoops, it should be 500. 500 centimeters. So there's another 60 centimeters up that is going to be the dome. Okay. With these guys here, I can delete them. I know they're right. What I'll do now is I'll actually go in to start building the walls. So this is going to be a fairly easy thing to do. I'm going to do this with a spline. A circular spline, which I'll build from the origin. And I'll go and place it accurately at the origin. And I'll go into the radii. Now the radii should be 440. Now the reason it's 440 is that the short distance across the oval is 88 or 880 centimeters. And so half of that gives me the radius of the circle, which should be 440. The next thing I'm going to do is convert this to an editable spline. And let's try scaling it first. And that's going to work beautifully. So I can actually get this to the point that it is following the dimensions quite closely. Okay. I'm going to place a extrude modifier on this. And I'm going to extrude it up 500. 500 should give me the height of the walls, like so. And now, before I do anything else, I can actually count how many polygons I get all the way around. Now, in terms of figuring this number out, there are a few things you can do. The first would be, in looking at the floor plan here, trying to get all the vertices to line up with where the windows and doors are. Now, assuming that this thing is as parallel as it appears to be, it looks like it might be a fairly easy thing. To go and adjust this, I'm going to go back to the editable spline. I'm going to show the end results of my editable spline, and I'm going to go into the interpolation. And the higher I bring the interpolation, the more points I get on my shape. So the idea is to get it until I start getting proper polygons in the right place. Now, I may need to get quite a few in here before I've actually got the right distance. It's getting there. I can see that it's still going to be off in a few places here. I'm going to say 18. So I think I'm going to do 18. You can see that they're not accurate here, which is just, you know, the way it is. There's no two ways around it. But I'll run it like that. I'm going to convert this to an editable poly now. And with that done, I don't need the rulers that I had made. So the next thing I'm going to do, since this is only just meant to be the walls, is I'll delete what looks like the ceiling and the floor, giving me now just the actual oval walls. Now, there are a lot of elements here that need to be modeled to this. They would be the floorboards, the chair high railing that goes around has to be modeled out of this mesh. There's a fairly intricate crown molding that goes all the way around the top of this thing. It needs to be made out of this as well. And then the dome. That would have to be made as well from this dome. And so what I would probably do is go and give this a name like master. Like so, and then clone it. Now the reason for that, and I'm going to make sure this is a copy, not an instance, is that I can now go and select the one called master, this guy, and hide it. I now have the original mesh before mucking around with this one to get the things that I need. If I ever need to go back and adjust things, I've got that mesh. The next thing that I would do is I need to go and add the proper meshes here, the proper edges to this thing, where each of these openings is. Now, there's a really easy way of doing this. It's just going to be adding a Swift loop. Now, the idea is you get the Swift loop to line up, and you hold Shift when you click. Now, what you need to do is... It's not Shift that I want. I got the wrong shortcut. Let me go to Swift loop. Shift to insert an edge loop, adjust the new loop, flow, control. Control Alt. That's the shortcut I want. That doesn't seem like it's doing what I want it to. So the issue here is that we need these new edges when I add them, like this, to actually still follow the curvature. So if we look at this in this mode, you can see that that vertex does not follow the curvature. Now, if I go grab these things and we set flow, nope, in here, go back to my edges, and we set flow, yeah, that still did not bring it out. So I'm going to get rid of this. It's essentially, it's flow connect that I need here. Let me try it this way. Let me try and do one edge here and one edge here and flow connect. Flow connect. So what flow connect does, if we go look at this new edge here, is that the vertices are following the flow of the ones on either side. So this is not a straight polygon anymore. It's now a curved one. So what I could do now is just turn on the edge constraints, and I should be able to slide this over to where it needs to be. So I can do the same thing here with each of these things. Add a flow connect. So I'll just use ring to do this. I'll add another flow connect. I still have the edge constraint on, so I can just slide it over to where it's supposed to be. And just line it up with where that gap is. So here too, ring, flow connect, and I'll move it over until it lines up with where each of these little window gaps is. So again, I'll use ring and flow connect and move back over here. There's another one here. Again, ring, flow connect, and move it this way. And one here, ring, flow connect, and move it over. And what this should be doing is it should be connecting these edges here in a way where you end up with the right number of edges, the right curvature on the mesh, and I'm not removing any of the other edges that are there, which means that there won't be any flat spots in the wall. And so if I do this all the way around, I should be able to just get this correct. Another one here. And I'm just sort of tracing my way around the room. Lining them up with the big, thick black lines here that indicate the outer perimeter. Again, ring, connect, and move this over. Now you can see the edge on the ground shifting around. That's okay. I'm not sure what this is. I think it's a little cubby tucked into the side of the wall. And so, yeah, you probably want to put edges there too. I'm not going to go to that trouble. No, there's no need. There's no need to make this modular. The reason you don't want to do it modular is there's nothing modular about the room. All of the walls are one continuous shape, so there's nowhere to hide a seam. There's nowhere to put something that would allow you to break it up. The only place that comes close to that is maybe the drapery on the one side, but unless that kind of breakup happens again at the door side, you'll never be able to. And you can see that over here, it does not. There's no breakup here. The door doesn't go all the way up on the other side. So you'll never get to a point where you can actually hide a seam on one end of it. So because of that, no, it's this is definitely not a modular setup. So with these in place, ring, flow, something like that. So with those in place, I can actually now start cutting at the height of the door or whatnot. That's a fairly easy thing to do. Just add an edge here, and then bring this up until it matches the height of, where those doorways are or the windows are, what have you. Now, it would appear to me, just again looking at the reference images, that all the doors and windows go floor to ceiling, which is good. That means we can actually go and delete all the stuff we want. So I have no idea if that edge is at the right height or whatnot, but we're going to pretend. And what I'm going to do next is just go and select, and maybe I'll do this with the selection tool to make sure I don't accidentally move anything, is to just go and select all the polygons that should not be here. Everyone that is a window or a door or an opening, all the way along. I don't know if there's a door. There's probably something there. No, it looks like there's two opposing doors. And so anyway, once I've got that selected all the way around, I can delete it. I can grab the entirety of this mesh and flip it the right way so the walls all point towards the insides. And now comes the task of unwrapping this, which is an insanely easy thing to do. This is my UV seam, this one edge. That's all I need. The way to do this, I'm just going to grab all of the polygons here that make up this shape. I'm going to cylindrically unwrap them, planar map them. And there's my seam. It actually went right in the right place for me. There's now the walls. I'm going to go and put a pattern on here so I can check to see the resolution that I'm getting. You can see that I'm inside out, so we're going to flip this. I'm going to bring it up here to 0 and 1. I can even go and just adjust it manually. And it doesn't matter if this stays in the 0 to 1 or not. What matters is that these things are all square. So I can go into the square tool and just drag this out until each of those things is square. Now, because I use the cylindrical one, I do want to kind of go all the way around the room, because a lot of times the cylindrical mapping will contort or stretch things a little bit. I can try this by doing a relax. I know that seems to be just fine. So yeah, it doesn't even matter if this is on. Ooh, it did get a little broken. I'm going to undo that relax. Yeah, let's not relax it. And so what I'll do is I'm just going to stretch this out until each of those little 64s is square. Looks like I could go a little bit further. And then that's it. That's all I really need to do. With that done, just convert this to an editable poly. And there's your walls. If I go and turn this off and we go kill the material that's on here and just isolate them, that should be all of it. On the left side of the room, on the top of the doors, there's a half circle inset. How would you add that piece in? A half circle inset. I'm just looking at reference. Are you talking about, I'm just looking at reference here. Are you talking about this kind of thing? The little arch that lives up? Because I can see, like, in these windows here, like, there's a little archway above. So you can see there. I'm not seeing it above any of the doorways. I can see there's a triangular one here. I can't see that left doorway. Oh, you can see this guy too. This is the hidden door. You might want to make the hidden doorway. So making it out of a new mesh. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yeah, so that's a fairly easy thing to do. All you gotta do, so let me find, I'm gonna try and line this up here so I'm doing this the right way. So it goes on here. So yeah, it looks like I actually did miss. There's a doorway here and a doorway here that got missed. I don't know why they're not part of that diagram, or maybe I just didn't read the diagram correctly. Oh no, it's this one. This is the doorway. Okay, so on this guy, let me go and bring that down. Let me go here. Okay, So I've got these guys here. I'm going to bring them down to the right height of where that door is. Somewhere about here. Again, you know, you want to check all these heights, make sure they're all in the right place. But something like this, I don't really need to worry about these verts, though I can. Actually, I probably will, just to get them out of the way, in order to get this to work correctly. So there's that. The little arch appears to be dug out of this wall. So one of the things that I could do, again, I've still got the edge constraint here turned on, is start to adjust these two edges here so that they are centered in that area a little bit more. And I can also do this by using the space evenly function. That'll give me a much cleaner shape. And then it's just a matter of going in and cutting that shape out. So let me see where the rotation of this piece is. It's about there. So the idea is to go and line something up with this that does have the curvature cut out of it. So I would normally do this with a cylinder and go and find the edge and put the cylinder in there until it's got the right shape that you want. And it's going to be a little bit bigger than the hole because the it matches the wooden frame around it. And then what I would do, let's do this. I don't have any height segments here. I would go and make this, yeah, essentially a cookie cutter. 18 sides is probably fine. I would go line it up with where that chunk of the wall is, like this. And what we need to do is line it up with this axis. And so if I do this on my top view and go and grab this guy, I can see exactly where that is. And I can try and manually orbit this around to get it to match up. And you can see it's going to be really, really tough to match that angle exactly. And so if I go and right-click in here, I can go and kind of manually fidget with the numbers to try and get it as accurate as I want. But in the end, as long as you get it to the right place is all that really matters. And then, again, I'll move it over. I haven't converted it to edible poly yet. I'm just kind of getting it to be the right dimensions. Lining it up with the doorway. Again, you want to be very accurate in where it gets lined up. That would be by grabbing this edge. Where are you? This edge. This edge right here. And getting the X and Y. So I'll go and copy this number. 170,821. I'll grab this guy. I'll paste that in here. 170,821. Okay. So that thing's now in the right place. So it is centered. And I can just increase the radius here till it encompasses both the door and the wooden frame. I probably want to make the height match this thing's height. So the height of this guy, which is right here, I'm going to paste that in. And this just makes sure that the center point of my, the center point of this cylinder matches the doorway. So once I've got that done, it's a fairly straightforward process. You can see that rotation's not there. That's a little bit better. Once you've got that, then it's just a matter of, yeah, cookie cutter. So I'm going to convert this in edible poly, and I'll take the polygons and delete them. They're not needed. I can grab the wall. I can go in a cut, and I'll turn on snaps. And then I can just start cutting around here, snapping to the vertices of that thing. Now Max's viewport is being a pain here. And so I'm going to do this in the orthographic view. So you have a hard time centering on this, but it's just a matter of going around, clicking on those vertices all the way around. Now, if you do this in a orthographic view or a perspective view, what's going to happen is you're going to be off. The vertices, you can see here, do not line up with that cylinder. And the reason for this is that they are, when I'm using the cookie cutter method here, they're lining up with the angle my camera's at, which is kind of complicating things a little bit. So you can do one of two things. You could rotate the entire room so that this one polygon is at the flat point of the room. Or you could line a camera up to the cylinder. Just create a new camera, line it up to the cylinder, leave it in the middle of the room somewhere, and use that camera to trace that out. But that's essentially all there is to it. And then you'll have that little archway cut that you can recess and do what you need to with it. I'm trying to get a high-res image of that to see how much it actually goes in. But yeah, that's essentially all there is to it. And then yeah, so when you're doing it, you know, in terms of the texturing, you know, you just make sure you get the wallpaper exactly. I would match that in Designer, and you know, you can just create tiling wallpaper, and then you just apply it to the mesh. The UVs are sound, and yeah, you'll get something really nice and clean out of that. Now this hole, this guy here, the archway hole thing that I made, you know, you're essentially just going to cut those polygons out and make a mesh that sits in there. Looking at that shape, where did it go? There it is there. So I would actually just cut that chunk out of the wall and then make this as a separate mesh that just sits right in the hole. Yeah, these panels down at the bottom here, that is just going to be another mesh. You just slide it right on top. And then I would do the same thing with it. You know, you make a single mesh out of it. You can even start it from, this is why I keep that other chunk, right? If I unhide all and I go back to the master. So there's the master, and I would clone the master again and call this floorboards. Like so. There's the floorboards. Add a cut to them. Get rid of all of this. Bring that back. Select all of this. Again, it's inside out, so I can flip it. Extrude it so it goes by local normal. You know, 10 centimeters is probably much. It's probably going to be closer to like an inch. So do 2.54. And then again, same deal. Like this one's got to be cut where all the doorways are. And if you go look at the way those cuts work, they don't quite reach the opening. You know, there's a gap right there. And so you stop them short. But it's just a mesh that's going to live right on top of that other one. And so, yeah, that's what I would do out of here. And then same deal. So once you start getting this guy, let me hide this one. Right, so you start getting to a point where, you know, you need to end that mesh. You just go and add a swift loop to the right place. One here, too. And again, you measure these guys out so that they're going the right direction. You do that kind of thing, and then you're able to go in and delete this. And then you do the same thing with the UVs. This is all going to be on one material. You know, the whole thing goes all the way around the room, all one material. And the UVs are exactly the same as... the UVs are going to be done exactly the same way as the walls, right? So it's just one big long stretch outside the 0 to 1 box. Because it's a repetitious pattern. You just make that pattern, and off you go. Done and done. All right. I hope that helps. I'm going to move on to Another request I've got, which involves doing a tree. Now, the funny thing about this is that I used to teach a course on doing trees. It took me a couple of lectures. We did it as an assignment, and I ended up cutting it from my lectures only because it was a pain in the arse. A lot of students didn't really enjoy it, and I often didn't have that many students that really wanted to do trees. They had other things they wanted to do, and so with it getting cut, I now don't cover it at all. And it's been a couple of years since I've had anybody want to do a tree, and so I'll kind of walk through the process I use for doing this. Now, it's kind of an iterative process, and I'm not going to go to the full extent of showing you how to do this, but essentially, it starts with a texture. That texture is of the leaf that you want for your tree. Normally, I go to the trouble of making it as accurate as I can to a very specific breed. Depends on what you're really trying to make with it. But yeah, the better you can do that, the better the end result is going to be. There's something going on with my internet here. It is not up to speed. So I'm going to go to images, and we'll take a look at some leaves. So all we really need, I mean, the more images you have, the better. Essentially, we're going to make a high poly version of one of these leaves. It's not even high poly. We're going to kind of fake everything that we're doing. Wow, that is brutal. And the idea here, come on now. I am unable to load anything here at the moment. Okay. So I'm going to let that load. I'm not really sure what happened. I'm going to try and Google leaves again here. That seems to have gone faster. A little hiccup in my internet. You got a Braybook. Enjoy. Okay. So the idea here is to start off with an image of a leaf. You know, it should match the breed of tree that you're doing, and should be you know, the size and dimensions of what you want it to be. Now, you don't really need to start with an image. You can actually just make your own leaf, you know, make a high poly version of a leaf. It doesn't really matter. There are some things, if you're going to use images, that you want to avoid. Specularity is one of them, meaning you don't want an image of a leaf that's got these reflective hotspots in it. So you want to avoid that. Anytime you get reflectivity in here, showing up as part of your texture, which won't read correctly. And so, kill that. I'm just noticing there is bandwidth errors all over the place. Hey, Glitch Gaming. No, I will not be using SpeedTree. SpeedTree is a plugin, and the reason that I've been asked to model a tree is primarily for students of mine working on the UBNXT contest and using a plugin that auto generates art for you when trying to enter a contest is generally a bad thing. The entire point of this contest is to see what you're capable of as an artist, and so if you use a plugin, you're not really demonstrating how capable you are. Even though it's been my experience that a lot of studios will just opt for using something like SpeedTree as it's faster. Yeah, I'm having some major lag issues here with my stream. I'm not really sure what's going on. I'm not sure why it's crapping out on me. I tell you what I'm going to do. It seems to comes in ebbs and flows. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, and I'm going to give my system a reboot. I've had it on for a couple of days here, and I've had software up and down and whatnot. And so there might be a few things running in the background that I'm not really paying attention to. And so I'll close down, I'll stop the stream, and we'll see if rebooting doesn't speed it up. And so I'll be back in